Hey everyone, welcome back. Brand new Take Aim podcast. Excited this week I have Butch Whiting on from Kryptek. And if you know anything about Kryptek, it's one of the most unique and kind of groundbreaking camouflage patterns we've ever seen. But we dive a little bit more into just Butch, his prior history of being in the military, which is amazing and awesome, and thank him for his service, and just what he's done as an entrepreneur and bringing this company to the hunting industry that I'm actually really proud of, that we have a company like this. They do so many great things. And just mind-blowing what they've accomplished, from being in video games to movies to being on you see Kryptek on the side of Lamborghinis. I mean, it's amazing what they've accomplished, but a great story. And again, thanks for Butch for being on and his service, everything he's accomplished. It's amazing and kind of mind-blowing. You can't even ask Butch enough questions because the guy's accomplished that much stuff. But again, hope you guys enjoy. Make sure you check out Kryptek, and as always, enjoy the show. It's a good one. All right, guys, welcome back to brand new Take Aim podcast. And as always, excited to get a new show out, and this show is no exception, but excited to have Butch Whiting on from Kryptek, which is one of the co-founders and CEO of the company. And Butch, man, welcome to the show. Super excited to talk about you and to me, one of the best brands, coolest, unique brands in the industry today.
Well, thank you, Brandon. I appreciate the accolades, and I'm happy to be on your podcast, so I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, thanks. I'm sure coming from your background, which we're going to talk about, the military side, you probably don't think of your gear as cool, but, civilian hunter guys like me definitely do. You've done something so unique, and just that your guys' pattern is so universal. But let's get into kind of how you started this and your background and what you've seen from the military translate to you as a hunter. Yeah,
well, I grew up hunting, was extremely passionate about it. It was the culture of my family. That's what we did for family vacation, is we would go to hunting camp and deer camp and elk camp here in Idaho. And it really influenced who I was as a person, and also actually I think benefited me later on in life when I was a military officer. And those techniques that were kind of ingrained into me as far as being a hunter also translated to being on the battlefield. So the Kryptek story really starts in Talafar, Iraq. I was the commander of Renegade Troop 43 ACR, and that was an Apache attack helicopter unit. I flew Apache attack helicopters and been to Afghanistan and to Iraq numerous times. And through that multiple deployments, also was missing a lot of hunting seasons and a lot of opening days. And so I would daydream about being in the backcountry and hunting whenever we weren't out doing missions. And one of my junior warrant officers, Josh Cleghorn, who's the other founder of Kryptek, he and I, were winged together. He was my wingman, basically. We flew most of our missions together. When we had downtime, we'd daydream about being in the hunting industry. Well, it kind of started with just telling hunting stories. And this idea kind of spawned, which was, how cool would it be to actually, have a company that was nested in the outdoor industry and still support our family, and have kind of like a lifestyle by design. So there was a ton of innovations after 9/11 and the war on terror on all fronts. There was innovations in weaponry and aircraft and equipment across the board, including apparel. And so as we saw some of those improvements in apparel, we saw the application in the hunting market. And ultimately, when Kryptek started and went kind of from a concept to a hobby was when Cabela's got a hold of a prospectus or a business model that had one sentence in it, and that sentence was to spiral features and functions out of the special operations community into the civilian hunting market. And ultimately, I got a phone call from the head of the big game division at Cabela's and ended up going to Sidney, Nebraska, and they said, we absolutely love this tactical hunting crossover. We've tried to do this in the past, but we haven't been real successful with it, and we'd like to talk to you about basically standing up a program that would be exclusive to Cabela's. And so we entered into an exclusive with those guys in 2010, and the only place you could buy Kryptek gear in 2010, 11, 12, probably 13 was actually at Cabela's. But it was not in the camouflage that you are familiar with. We actually started off with another camo pattern that we licensed called Mothwing Mountain Mimicry. And so our gear in those early days was in Mothwing. But this battlefield to backcountry, which is our slogan, and truly that's the fiber of our brand, was what attracted Cabela's to us out of the gate. And, while that was going on, back to the camouflage aspect of it, there was a solicitation for the U.S. government, or from the DOD for the U.S. government, to develop a new family of camouflage that was specifically going to be for the U.S. Army. And they wanted to cover 3 primary regions or environments. They wanted a camo pattern for a desert environment, a woodland/jungle environment, and then transitional, which was everything in between. And so we had aspirations to and knew what was the most effective passive concealment measure on the battlefield, which was camouflage netting. That we'd seen this, rolled out and deployed in numerous environments, whether it was coalition forces or U.S. forces. But when that camo netting was put over a hide side or over or over tents, and those hexagons got distorted and that fabric was woven in and out, that was the most effective passive concealment measure on the battlefield. And so our inspiration was to take that camouflage netting and put it on take it from a 3-dimensional aspect to a 2-dimensional aspect and be able to actually put it on a flat fabric surface. And so we started with that idea, and we actually kind of did things a lot different than other camo companies at the time, which was primarily sticks and leaves in the outdoor industry. But we started at 400 meters, because that's the max effective range of a 5.56, and we started to walk back in and adjust the camo, both the micro pattern and the macro pattern, to be extremely effective at long distance. And then we ultimately stopped our testing at 10 meters because that's all the closer that the Department of Defense and the U.S. government was going to test to. Whereas other camo companies would start at what we call 48 inches or shelf appeal. They wouldn't take into consideration the actual effectiveness, how it would look at distance, whereas we did that. So anyway, the camo patterns that you might be familiar with, Brandon, that you were telling me about that you ran up in Canada, Highlander, that is our transitional camo that we developed or covers the transitional region that we developed for the government, and is extremely, extremely effective. And the DOD spent north of $10 million testing our camouflage. We were down selected against, at that time, 60-some-odd companies. We were down selected down to final 4 companies. And we went into phase 2 testing. And ultimately, we had the most effective camouflage pattern, I think, in modern history. It got extremely political. There was never actually an announcement and a transition by the DOD, but we did get picked up into some U.S. special operations units, both Navy Special Warfare and Army Special Warfare, and also coalition spec ops as well. So, in a nutshell, that was a major touch point in the life cycle of the Kryptek brand, was us developing this camo for the DoD. And we can say still today that Kryptek is the only camouflage that's in the civilian hunting market that's been extensively tested by the U.S. government and the Department of Defense, and then also selectively used by U.S. Special Operations and Coalition Spec Ops as well. So I know that's a long-winded start.
Yeah, that's amazing, Butch.
Yeah.
No, that is completely amazing. And yeah, for sure. It's unreal what you guys achieved, and that is a record that, nobody has. And it's kind of neat that you mentioned Mothwing, and all the way back to then. I actually knew the owner of Mothwing, and I was so happy back then, 2010-ish, and actually I think I knew the owner all the way back to maybe 2005, and just to see somebody else come out and do something different. And I thought it was so unique, and I was like, man, this is so good for the hunting industry. So I'm happy that, that's a unique story that you guys have right there with them, and how you took it and kept running with it and developed your own pattern and took what you knew from the military. And like you said, that exactly is so true. What you guys did with that pattern from 3D to 2D is absolutely amazing. And it just always reminds me of, I'm sure you've heard this 100 times, but just watching the movie Predator and the alien from the movie, the pattern is exactly like that. It just blows my mind that, obviously that's your specialty, but it just blows my mind what you guys have done with that pattern and how it moves and the shapes. And, it just is, like you said, you guys are the first ones to work with the government, get to pass so many so-called screenings and levels. And obviously, if it's going to work for the government, a guy like me that's basically just hunting should be able to trust that pattern more than anything.
Yeah, you mentioned the coolness factor when we started this thing. That was never our intent at all. It was all about functionality and how it performed. And we did completely disrupt the sticks and leaves, legacy camo industry. And the shelf appeal aspect was highly by coincidence. There was not a consideration for shelf appeal. But the other thing that we did, once we developed the macro and the micro pattern and got everything dialed in for functionality, and we plugged in the colorways for the three primary patterns, which was Nomad for the desert, Mandrake for the jungle / uber green environments, and then Highlander for everything in between. Our guys started to just bump other colors into that macro and micro pattern. So in all cases, the structure stays the same. What changes is the color and how it's distributed in the pattern. And we did get asked by a Navy Special Warfare element to do some water designs for wetsuits, and out of that, these water patterns got evaluated, and some of them didn't make the cut. And so I never in a million years ever thought that we would get this lifestyle node, but we ended up having major stupid success in the fishing industry, which is nothing more than a psychology aspect. I mean, there's no true functionality, I guess, in my opinion. There might be for like some sort of fly fishing scenario where you have to sneak up on the fish and you don't want them to see you, but for the most part, Kryptek camo and these other colorways have become extremely popular. And I never imagined in a million years that we would have this groundswell in what I call lifestyle. So on one side of the spectrum, we're, got this stupid badass gear for hunting. On the other side of the spectrum, we have programs that we're doing with Tier 1 spec ops elements. And then in the middle, we've got this lifestyle groundswell. I mean, if you Google Kryptek cars, you'll see Ferraris and Lamborghinis and like super expensive supercars that are wrapped in Kryptek at the owner's accord. It's not like we went out there and tried to pay those people to do that. They're doing it on their own because of that quote-unquote coolness factor. We've landed out of this thing, too, in a bunch of movies, all kinds of movies, like Jurassic World, Expendables 3, Fast and Furious 7, you know, the list goes on. And that's just like mainstream big box movies. You get into all kinds of, you know, other movies that are like on Netflix and Amazon. I can't even keep up with them all. But then it also spiraled into video games like Call of Duty Black Ops, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, Tom Clancy Ghost Recon. And this all is by chance. It's not like they're coming to us and they're wanting to put this stuff on these platforms or in the movies and stuff. And it's all driven by this, you know, passion that really started in Talafar, Iraq, missing, you know, numerous hunting seasons and just kind of wishing that we were in the outdoor industry. So, you know, there's been a lot of, I guess,
so crazy
luck along the way here with this stuff. And out of that too, now we're kind of considered, you know, camouflage experts globally, and we've actually been approached by, you know, some foreign countries and helping them develop camo patterns specific to their regions. And yeah, it is crazy, man. And it's all driven out of a passion for hunting, you know, and specifically for deer hunting. So
yeah, it's weird how hunting, and it seems the Hollywood elites, and there's sort of a conflict there of, you know, how we've been portrayed in movies and whatnot. But a little compensation for that to me, which has been able to see, like in Shooter and Fast and Furious and so many movies, you know, to see your guys' pattern, because I just feel like it's a kind of like a tap on the back that, you know, you took something from our industry and it's in freaking Hollywood. It's in video games. It's on I've seen it on at least a $500,000 boat before. It's really insane. And just as an American and entrepreneur myself, man, like it makes me excited to even talk to you about it, because I just, like, such kudos to you guys for, I know you said a lot of it was just organic where they approached you, but just, I mean, super amazing. That's all I can say. So kudos to you guys. It's unreal.
Yeah. I feel that what delineates us from our competitors, both in all the markets, really is the authenticity and enormous amount of credibility that I feel is just an organic part of our brand and who we are. The authenticity and the credibility of the camouflage patterns that we've designed and developed, and just back into the brand itself, you know, and who we are as individuals, our own personal combat experience, and then also, you know, the guys that we're working with on a daily basis, and the programs we're involved in. You know, there's just an enormous amount of credibility wrapped around the Kryptek brand, and I think that's what carries that secondary and tertiary type lift into these, you know, amazing venues. Ultimately, that's the reason why.
Yeah, for sure. And I know, you know, I've seen somewhere, Butch, forgive me, I don't know where it was, but I know you guys have a lot of people that are, you know, still in the military, post-military, but still maybe doing tactical operations or whatnot, and they're all in your gear every single day. So it just seems like you're getting such a diverse, you know, input from so many different backgrounds that, you know, it's got to be so helpful for you guys running a company that you can say, well, hey, we need to, you know, tweak this pocket or tweak the length of these pants or, you know, whatnot. So it just seems like, obviously, it's not just hunting, but it's mobility. Those guys have to be mobile hunters. It still correlates, and that's unique that you guys get so much input like that.
Yeah, we have, you know, a really super badass combat tactical line, and that collection was actually developed in direct collaboration with U.S. Army Special Operations, and then has been deployed numerous times downrange. And then we've gotten feedback on, what they liked, what they didn't like. We actually have a bunch of intellectual property and patents on various features and aspects, but all of that current, like real-time, like 2019, 2018 type testing, there's a lot of that will be brought right into the civilian market and be available, to the everyday guys that are out there, in the backcountry or the tree stands and basically hunting, or hiking or mountain climbing, doing whatever. I mean, ultimately, that's the test bed, though. That's the research and development. And we're also pushing the limits on our fabrics. We've got some crazy technologies that are unique in the civilian hunting market. We partnered in one of our collections with Scholler out of Switzerland for our altitude line. And that fabric's actually printed in Germany, extremely super high tech. But then we've also got collections that go down to just, polycotton tweeds that is, much more economical and super hot weather, and they'll hold up to the thorns and the brush in Texas or Africa. So we've got collections that cover like all the different environments and the spectrums that one might, find themselves in, regardless of where they're hunting and what they're doing. Yeah, so to your point, we've got a really cool and very, very unique pro staff, and also relationships through that pro staff back into organizations and entities that you can't just walk into. You have to have relationship to get access to, and we're very blessed to have those guys as part of our brand.
Yeah, it seems like you guys have a lot of the right people in the right places, so to speak. And, coming from the hunting side, but I kind of want to just turn a little bit, but give me a little background. And I don't want to speak on, I know you're a Westerner guy, and I'm sorry, I almost slipped there, Butch, and called you a Westie, so I apologize. That seems to be the thing right now in the Midwest.
Uh-huh.
I'm just teasing. But, whitetail-wise and mule deer-wise, bow hunting-wise, kind of you being the main guy, give us the rundown on kind of like what your preferred patterns would be, and maybe some of your preferred gear that I know you talked pre-show that you've whitetail hunted quite a bit all over here on this side of the Mississippi. So give me kind of just the rundown on what you really like and as far as your favorite gear for that.
Yeah, well, I love hunting whitetail, and I've shot I don't know how many, a lot with my bow, and actually I'm a giant bow hunter. I just kind of rabbit hole real quick and let you know some more background. I went to Gonzaga University, got my degree in mechanical engineering, and I did my senior design project for high country archery. And I actually designed them 2 new bows, and one of those became Bow of the Year in 2000. It was the Carbon Forerunner. And so I'm extremely passionate about bow hunting, and if I could choose, I guess if somebody put a gun to my head and said you can only hunt with one weapon, pick one, I'd obviously pick a bow. I love that more than anything. I'm often find myself getting, asked to go on hunts that are rifle specific. But at the end of the day, bow hunting is very, very near and dear to my heart. To your point, I was introduced into whitetail hunting through the military. I started, whitetail hunting at my first stateside duty assignment at Fort Campbell, Kentucky in 2000, and actually learned all the ins and outs and, different things that a Western hunter could really not appreciate or understand, such as, how to hang a stand, where to hang a stand, bedding areas, transitional areas into food sources and that type of thing. And I was very fortunate to have one of my best friends through flight school that grew up back east, and that's all he did. And I'll tell you that I killed my very first whitetail with a bow at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, that scored 169 inches with 9-inch brow tines.
Oh.
I still have it mounted. Yeah. And I had no idea what I had done. My buddy Ryan Welch was completely beyond himself and traumatized. And in those days, you had to take a Polaroid picture at the check station, and they put it up on a board. And so, I didn't think much of it. I went home and actually put that whitetail rack inside of a mule deer rack that I took with me as I moved around all over the place that I had shot when I was a young kid. And it's pushing 30 inches inside spread. It's a really wide buck. And so I could put that whitetail rack inside of it, and I could turn it left and turn it right. And I just was like, yeah, this is cool, but it's not, I don't know. I didn't appreciate it at the time. But through that picture on that Polaroid, the Fish and Game showed up at my house and knocked on the door, and they wanted to pull a tooth to do some testing. And it was kind of interesting. They had determined that they'd brought some deer up to Fort Campbell from Texas at one point, and they had interbred with the local deer. And this was one of those, crossbreeds. So they were interested in it. But after they they examined the deer and they basically oohed and awed over it, I started to realize, man, this really is something. So I went down to Barnes & Noble that morning after they left, and I bought a whitetail book, and I read it from cover to cover that afternoon, and I realized, holy shit, I just shot a giant. And so I then decided I was going to get that deer mounted, But that was the very first. That's the very first whitetail I ever killed with my bow. And then I got to hunt a lot more at Fort Campbell. Of course, 9/11 disrupted a lot of things. So Tennessee, Kentucky, land between the lakes, all that country, and then up in Kansas when I was stationed up at Fort Leavenworth and stuff. So the thing that I guess that I really, when you ask the gear that I would recommend, there's the seasonality and there's the visual acquisition, but everybody knows when it comes to whitetail, it's really about two primary considerations: scent control, and this is my opinion, scent control, and then what I call acoustic signature, which is being quiet, right? And we do have some very specific gear that we've designed that's a part of our collection, and that's the Velis. And it's a fleece, outer fleece gear that's also got a laminate in it, so it's waterproof and, more importantly, windproof, because God knows how cold you can get when you're sitting in a stand. I don't think Western hunters really can comprehend that if they've never been in a stand all day and the wind's blowing, 10, 20 miles an hour, and it's only 30 degrees out, but it feels like it's 30 below. So that Velis collection and the Anorak that's also available there, those are excellent whitetail deer hunting pieces. Uber exceptional. As far as the scent aspect, we don't have any, whiz-bang, charcoal lined, all the stuff. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. I think that you just have to pick your stand based on the weather conditions for that day and have multiple options to always, keep downwind from what you anticipate is going to be your engagement zone. So my recommendation, back into the type of hunting that you're really hyper-focused on, Brandon, would be the Kryptek Velis collection. That comes in Highlander, which is, going to be great for fall when the leaves start changing colors to where they fall off. It's a warmer piece, early season, when everything's still stupid uber green and the deer are still in velvet type hunts. That's going to go back into Mandrake, and we've got some great pieces that would be hot weather pieces that I would call them. There's Hyperion shirts, which are we've got some great technology on that. It actually does have some scent control in it, but just breathes really well when it's blistering heat and you're still able to get some early season action in. But by far the best late season, or call it cooler weather, November type gear is going to be that Velis collection, and it's gotten nothing but amazing reviews. I mean, it's been put to the test. Yeah.
I'm looking at that jacket right now, and it does look amazing, and it's like you said about the fleece and the micro fleece in it, and just I know it has some Primaloft too, but it's like that is ideal for what you said about being on stand all day, being cold. You never get a chance to really get your blood moving, and like you kind of mentioned earlier, I'm sure that was a big shock from you coming from the West to the Midwest to chase whitetails. You're probably like,
yeah, I was going to tell you that I have been asked that. What's the coldest that you've been in a hunting situation? And I've hunted, all over the world and actually lived in Alaska for 7 years and did a lot of hunting up there, expeditionary type hunts in the Brooks Range and, some extreme Arctic conditions up there. But the coldest that I have ever personally been is whitetail hunting on stand in Kansas. And I had the wrong gear. I was still active duty military. Obviously, it's well before Kryptek. And I got rained on, and then I froze my ass off to the point to where I still have some my hands are super sensitive to the cold now, and it was specifically from that hunt where I basically just almost got hypothermic in the stand. So, it's pretty interesting how you would expect a story from Alaska or a story from Canada or even Idaho here. We get pretty cold too, but it actually was from, to your point, east of the Mississippi in Kansas. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we have an appreciation for super good quality gear that's going to keep you, on the stand or in the field or out actually hunting, regardless of what the weather's doing. And that's, at the end of the day, that's the end state, is that it doesn't matter as much of the paint job on it. What matters is, how good the gear is and how it holds up and how it performs. I mean, Kryptek Camo is a paint job. And it's a badass paint job with lots of credibility. But ultimately, what is on the gear itself is secondary to how well the gear performs when you need it to perform.
Yeah, that is super true. And, I know a lot of, especially Western guys, I'm so glad you had those experiences here in the Midwest that, like in Kansas, I don't think guys realize it's freezing. You need a jacket that has pockets inside, outside. You need a hood that you can remove or reattach. You need something that's hopefully windproof, hopefully water resistant, waterproof, because you can get a storm at any time in October and November, while you're on stand for 8 hours in the rut. And, it just seems like with the jackets you guys have made that you fit a lot of those criteria for a whitetail hunter, which, that's, to be honest, is really hard to do because there's a lot. Sometimes it's a 40-degree swing in a day. And you guys have seemed to build that in a lot of your gear.
Well, we have layering systems where you can layer up and you layer down if you're really aerobic, right? If you're a Western hunter, you're going to put your backpack on in the morning out of your tent, and you're going to put 15 miles on that day, and the temperature is going to go from in the morning, let's just say it's 28 degrees, and by mid-afternoon it's 60. But when you're whitetail hunting, you don't have the luxury of carrying a bunch of extra layers to layer up and layer down. Normally, once you get in the stand and you get settled, you're going to put on your clothes and you're going to wear them all day long. So that's kind of like these different collections are designed with the type of hunting in mind. I would never recommend the Velis to go hike around in all day here in Idaho. You know what I mean? You're going to sweat your balls off.
Yeah, exactly.
For one. So, and it's also kind of heavy. I mean, it's got great insulation properties. So it's about the application and the type of hunting you're doing. We have solutions for hot weather, early season, highly aerobic, highly anaerobic. So ultimately there's lots of different options within the Kryptek brand, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. And I know we spoke offline a little bit, and, I shared a little bit of a story with you about, heading to Alberta. So give me a little bit of kind of that, because what you said just a moment ago hit the nail on the head as far as it could be 28 in the morning and geez, there it warmed up to 70 some days. So give me kind of, 2 or 3 items, Butch, for that scenario, that type of mule deer bow hunt where, you might need this type of pant, maybe a base layer, and then you might want something, me personally, maybe a puffy jacket or something like that, and that you can strip off and probably pack away for the day.
Yeah. So by far my favorite, call it, that type of environment bow hunting is the Dalibor jacket and pant. So it's a soft shell. It's got a really super low acoustic signature. Again, it's very quiet, but it's great to layer up and layer down on. So, if you got your puffy jacket on and it's that early morning, you put that on and put the Dalibor over the top of it. It's going to keep that noise factor down. It also provides additional protection to that jacket that's vulnerable to sticks and rocks and things. It's easy to tear that soft face fabric on the insulation piece. It's main staple. I love the Dalibor, especially for Western type aerobic bow hunting. And then the layering pieces are important. So you got to have your puffy. You also need a rain piece, which is, really super hard to get around the acoustic signatures on rain gear and still stay lightweight. But we've got some really nice options for that. You want to have rain gear that you don't even know you have it. It just kind of is there in your backpack and it doesn't weigh anything. So we've got the Poseidon, which is a great super lightweight option, and then also the Jupiter. So your rain gear is the type of rainstorms we're going to get out west during, those, say, October or November. They're going to probably be here 1 second and gone the next. So it's not like a real super sustained rainstorms. They come and go, and you might have 2 of those a day or 3 of those a day, and you're going to put your rain gear on and hunker down for 30 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe 5 minutes. But I'd build that system to start with the Dalibor, and then depending on exactly what type of time of year, maybe have a heavier base layers and just layer up and layer down. And, as you're putting your spot and stock on, and when you get to those places where you're glassing, you're going to layer up and sit there and glass for a day or half a day and buck the wind and stay warm. And then when it's time to, get active, you're going to layer back down, put the shit in your backpack, and, you're going to go bust the mountain. And that's just kind of the difference in the hunting styles. And don't get me wrong, there's still guys that hunt in stands out west here, but it's not the same density that you guys have in the Midwest and in the East. It's just a lot more time, I think, doing spot and stalk type hunts, specifically for deer. But when you get down in the river corridors, there are guys that are still, whitetail hunting. Just a lot less of them, I believe, than there is back east.
Yeah, probably a lot less. But that is interesting, nonetheless, to even hear that guys are doing it out there, which I think is unique. I have a really good buddy that lives in Utah, and it is avid mule deer hunter, and he does a lot of kind of whitetail tactics, after some mule deer, and he's had some really good success doing that. And it's kind of neat to see some of the crossover with the techniques.
Yeah, for sure. If you're a good whitetail archery bow hunter with those techniques like you're talking about, you come out west, and if you can, get access, have a tag, and all those things that all play in, you can kill a big mule deer fairly easy just from patterning where they're figuring out their bedding area, their transition, where they're coming in and stuff. guys that are hunting with blinds on the ground. There's a lot of big mule deer that are taken late season and early season with those tactics that have been proven and the gear that's been provided, that's been driven out of the whitetail hunting market,
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that same buddy, Butch, I mean, that's one of the things he took kind of from the whitetail side is we talk a lot, and he's from Michigan, so he has that kind of Midwest whitetail hunting background, and he's using ground blinds in the mountains for mule deer all the time, and incorporating some more things I won't talk about because he'd probably kill me, but he's legitimately one of the best mule deer hunters there is, but he sees that correlations and how effective it is, which is it's just neat to talk about.
Yeah, I've got a really good friend that's on our pro staff, and he actually he runs a booking agent out here, hunting booking operation, and he consistently kills really big mule deer hunting a general season archery tag because over the years, all the way back until he was a little kid with his father, they basically found a spot that was habitually used during the migration. And so depending on the weather and the snow levels and when all that hits, they hunt out of a ground blind and they hike way back in. It's a super remote hunt. And a super tough hunt, but once they get set, they hunt out of a ground blind along one of these trails that runs down a ridge, and it's hit and miss, but they've taken some exceptional big, 180 to 190 type mule deer, and they do it consistently. So it's, whitetail technique brought west for sure, just like your buddy in Utah.
Yeah, and those are huge mule deer, by the way. To be pulling that off is pretty special. But so many cool things, to talk about stuff like that. It's super unique. But what you guys have, just kind of like you talked about, such a diverse company now. Is there something that at this moment that you would say you guys are maybe the most proud of what you've done product-wise or pattern-wise or something along that line that you guys have said, we're really the first at this, which is kind of everything you guys have really done at Kryptek. So I'm kind of throwing you a huge question there, but maybe just you personally, how you feel about it. Is there something that you really like, this is really special to me that we've achieved this?
Well, I think I've got several, but specific to this discussion that fits within a discussion would be our altitude collection. I mentioned that earlier, but to go back and just revisit on that. So Scholler is a stupid, prominent, amazing company with over 60 years of mountaineering type fabric development. They're very well known in Europe, but we're the only hunting brand in the world that has a deal with Scholler, and this is really premium fabrics and really high performing fabrics and fast drying, highly durable, extremely comfortable, and it's all been developed and honed through mountaineering, and that's where their research and development happened. And you can find products that are like similar or if not real close in the market, but it's going to be from brands like Arc'teryx and Solomon and Black Diamond and ski brands and stuff like this. And many of those brands are not hunting friendly at all. In fact, they're probably anti-hunting. You know what I mean? So
most of them are.
Yeah, for sure. So for example, you could go and look at our Tora pant, and you can probably go find a very similar pant for a similar price point that is from one of those brands that I mentioned or others. The fact of the matter is that the relationship we have with Scholler and all the work and all the research and development, it's been a very aspirational project, but now we've gotten it honed in and dialed in and commercialized, and we're also going direct to consumer only with that specific program. So we've got the price points down where they're more reasonable. But that is a collection that is a pricey investment, but it's one that is going to serve the end user extremely well. And, you know, it's been tested all over the world in all kinds of environments. I mean, from Africa, warm weather, to New Zealand, to Alaska, to Canada, to out west here, and even back east and in your area. I've got lots of different guys that have just raved about altitude, you know, tree stand hunting in some of these states that we've been talking about. So that collection is kind of like, I don't know, if you had to put an example out, that would be one that I'd have to say people really need to look at. And, you know, they won't appreciate it until they actually get in it and they start running it. And they're running it a lot. That range system is probably one of the coolest technologies in the outdoor industry. It's the Takura range system has a sea change laminate in it. So when that laminate, when you're aerobic and you get warm, it actually opens up and it increases the evaporation and the flow of the vapor off your body through the fabric, and actually moderates your temperature. As you cool down, those pores close back open and it retains the heat. So it's some just crazy awesome technology that we're dialed in the mountaineering industry in Europe, and we've been able to bring it and partner with those guys to the U.S. The other thing about that collection is if you stop and you start to think about the naming, you've got the Tora jacket and pant. You've got the Bora jacket and pant, Tora Bora. You've got the Takura systems. You've got the Gar, Takura Gar. All that shit ties directly back into my personal mountain combat experiences. So, believe it or not, as an Apache guy, I ever assaulted into Tora Bora with the 3PP CLI, which is the 3rd Princess Patricia's Light Infantry out of Canada, to exploit caves with those guys, and had a radio on my back and was talking to the H-64 Apaches that were Overwatch the entire time we were in there. So that's where that naming convention came from, the Tora Bora. Takura Gar was Operation Anaconda, which I was involved in as well, and that's Roberts Ridge. And, you know, there's all kinds of Navy SEAL stories and big things that happened over there that you could grab a hold down and talk about all that. But that whole entire collection all has meaning hidden within the naming structure as well. It's all mountain related. And yeah, so I know it's a long answer to your question, Brandon, but I guess the altitude collection is the answer to it.
No, that's a good answer, and thanks. I'm glad it was long-winded. I knew something would come out of that only you would know, and give us some background to something that was really special. And it sounds like, I mean, you just told us of fabric, which I have not heard of, that opens and closes. So, I mean, for you to have that relationship with a company like that, and I'm sure there's a bunch of proprietary things you don't want to talk about, but just, you know, in saying that you guys have built the foundation to do that based on what you guys are doing here hunting-wise and some of your team members that give you that feedback that correlates to a company in Sweden is really amazing. And just once again, kudos to you guys at Kryptek for bringing us something new that the hunting side has never seen. Yeah,
it's Switzerland, but yeah, you know.
Oh, Switzerland. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, it's about innovation, you know, and bringing new ideas and I guess features that are beneficial and useful to the end user. We were really early on pioneering knee systems, built-in knee systems too, which we have a multitude of different knee systems now. But if you're a spot and stock type hunter, having a built-in knee system is priceless, right? And it used to be that guys were strapping on knee systems that they bought down at Home Depot or Lowe's that a guy would use when he was roofing his house or, you know, working on a job site, and people were wearing those, not only in hunting scenarios if they were doing a lot of spot and stock, but guys, we were actually using that shit in combat early on. So, just as simple as that, and the application back into the hunting market is really, something that I think today people might take for granted, but at the time, it was needed and important. And so, we're going to continue as we find, things that are beneficial that work on the battlefield. We'll pull them into the backcountry and back into who we are, battlefield to backcountry. And that's the slogan, that's the mantra, and it's truly the fiber of our brand.
Yeah, you guys have done an amazing job, Butch, and super proud of the products that you have brought to the hunting side, and all you guys have accomplished, and I hope nothing but the best for you guys in the future. And Butch, before I let you go, just real quick, do you have any plans this coming year, hunting-wise? Do you have anything that you're super excited about?
I do have some stuff I'm dumb excited about, but I'm also extremely concerned about access with COVID-19. I've got a couple hunts lined out on some Indian reservations, and it depends on what happens with those states and what happens with the tribes, but also the governors and so on. So I've got a couple mule deer hunts lined out, one in Colorado, one in New Mexico. I've got an elk early season archery hunt lined out here in Idaho, and hopefully, the ones that could be impacted by COVID-19, they go through. I think that's going to be disruptive for a lot of guys that had hunts planned into Canada. It definitely already is impacted for Africa. Anybody that's actually leaving the continental United States could, be in jeopardy of not being able to do their hunts. But, if here in the U.S. as well, I think we're still going to see some ramifications if we're going into areas. So, yeah, I've got some hunts, but right now the Indian reservation is in doubt,
Yeah, that's a big question for sure. I know I've been affected a little bit, so I definitely can relate to what you're saying on that aspect with some planning some hunts out, man. It's horrible to, both sides of it's horrible, and leaving it up in the air because, and I know, hunting is, part of it is the schedule and scheduling, and every day that goes by and it gets closer to hunting season, it just makes it harder to do that stuff. So, but hopefully you get a few of them in, Butch, and we can get back together and maybe talk about a successful hunting season.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me know. I'd love to join you again in the future, and thanks for having me, and good luck to you, and good luck to your listeners this fall.
Yep, absolutely. And everybody, I don't think we covered it, Butch, but Kryptek.com. I know you guys are on all the social media sites, so make sure you guys look up Kryptek, and we will see you guys next week. As you know, you can find us on the Outdoor Podcast channel, Unfiltered Outdoor app, and iTunes. And Butch, thanks again. And also, I didn't say thanks for your service as well. Appreciate that and having you on the show today.
Thank you, Brandon. Have a great week.